Before I start, Beckett, wow, great job. It's hard to follow you. I just want to say good morning to everyone. My name is Michelle Slattery. I'm the Vice President of Sales for TDS Telecommunications. TDS is not only a proud sponsor of New North Summit, but we're also a proud partner of the Green Bay Packers. And for this Wisconsin-born girl, there is no greater honor than to be standing on this stage in Lambeau Field in the atrium talking to all of you. For those of you that may not know TDS, TDS is a Wisconsin-based company that has been in business for over 50 years. We are building an all-fiber, high-speed internet network throughout northeastern Wisconsin, including here in Green Bay, in the Fox Valley, Manitowoc, and several other communities. And we would like to thank New North for playing a critical role in laying the groundwork for a better connected region throughout their extensive broadband study and specific plans for each county. We know that internet access for all means better connected communities and more reliable and equitable opportunities for businesses, schools, healthcare systems, and individuals to thrive. But in addition to the world-class services, and strengthening our communities is a core part of TDS's missions. And events like today are an important part of bringing the business community together so that we can all learn, grow, and be inspired. Now, it is my greatest honor to introduce our next speaker, Lachrissa Grandberry, who will share her leadership journey and how she went from just surviving to thriving. Lachrissa is a composer, a playwright, performer, and director, and is based in Chicago, Illinois. Her writing credits include 2 musicals for Northern Sky Theater in Door County. She is a lyricist and a co-author of Girls on Sand, premiering this summer of 2024, as well as a lyricist, author, and co-composer of Sunflowered, produced at Northern Sky Theater in 2022. Lachrissa was named one of Wisconsin's 52 most influential Black leaders in 2022 and is an alumni of the Wisconsin Lutheran College. Please help me in welcoming Lachrissa Grandberry.
What a room. Hi. Thank you, Barb. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, New North, for having me here. As Michelle mentioned, I am Lachrissa Grandberry, and I'm so grateful to be in this room and talking to all of you and hearing from you as well. Now, I know many of you probably don't know much about me outside of that great bio, I suppose. I was like, she sounds cool. And I don't have a product or a plan or a book to offer you today, but I do have a story. And I hope that my story will do what stories do, which is transform, encourage, and inspire each of you in your own journeys. Now, in the spirit of talking about legacies, I decided to do something I've never done before. I Googled myself. Have any of you ever Googled yourselves? Okay, I see some head nodding. Yeah, wow. I was really impressed with what Google had to say about me. I Googled myself and it was like, boom, pictures of me everywhere. And then it had like an official title. It called me a musical artist. And I was like, wow, okay, thanks. But beyond that, Google will tell you that I work at Northern Sky Theater in Door County, that I am a playwright. You can find an album for the first musical I wrote, Sunflowered, on my Google. You will find out that I'm connected to Maestra and the Dramatists Guild. You will know that I'm a real actress because I have an IMDb account. You know what that is? All right, it's the Internet Movie Database. You'll know that I work at Second City, but be not dismayed, I'm no longer a comedian, at least not all the time. You might find some reviews for the show that I wrote 2 summers ago, and you might find a Patreon and my social media, a bunch of stuff when you Google me, which is all interesting, but it gives you enough information to make an assumption about who I am and the impact that I may have had in my life so far. So who am I? Who is Lachrissa Grandberry? beyond the Google search and the artistic work that I get to do, because those things are great, but that's not really who I am, or it's not the most valuable parts of me. Renee Goldsberry recently stated that what's most valuable about you are the things that you've survived, and I could not agree with her more. But for me, what's even more important is not just surviving, but it's getting to a place where I can thrive. So again, I ask, who is Lachrissa Grandberry? What have I survived in order to arrive in my place of leadership? And how am I going from arriving to thriving? So let's talk about it. But in order to talk about it, I gotta be vulnerable, okay? And I'm an artist, so I like talking, but it's usually hard for me to talk about myself. Zora Neale Hurston once said that if you are silent about your pain, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it. So if you really want to know who I am, beyond the Google search, beyond the woman who came up here and sang the national anthem, then it requires me to paint some of my pain on this stage as I speak to you. But don't worry, it'll get a little dark, but not a lot of dark, and we won't stay there forever because my story does not end sad or in pity. All right? All right, all right. The adults assigned to care for me as a child and nurture me were not good leaders. I mean, they did the best they could with what they had, but they were not good leaders. And because of the way my childhood was set up, I feel like I learned about leaping pretty early on in life, except I called it surviving. And I like clarity, so I want us to be on the same page as to what it means to leap. According to Google, you can tell I also like Google. According to Google, to leap means to jump or spring a long way to a great height with great force. It's a forceful jump or a quick movement from one place to another. So we're all clear that when you leap, it takes you somewhere. And considering where we are right now, I'd assume that we all know about a good leap thanks to the Lambeau leap, right? So, you see, I'm not well versed in sports. And I mean, it almost is gonna sound like a stereotype because I'm an artist, I don't know sports language. But what I do know is that in order for one of the players on the field to make that Lambeau leap, they have to go from one side of the field all the way to the other. And they have to bypass being tackled. They have to get through physical fatigue. They have to hold that ball really tight and don't lose grip. And they have to go through the pressure of everyone around them yelling, whether they're cheering or not, and screaming and try to, think clearly and get to the other side. And that's a hard task because it comes with a lot of hurdles. And then you can finally get the touchdown and make the leap. Well, my life has been something like that. I would consider my first big leap in life at the age of 12. When I was 12 years old, I left my mother's home. This was after surviving a lot of hurdles, okay? One of my first big hurdles on the field of life, my life, was when I was 4 years old. I got a question. How many of you like really good food? Oh, great. Not enough hands, but I saw quite a few. Everybody should like good food. Come on, people. How many of you have a happy dance when you're about to eat some good food? Okay, yeah. You know, when you have some real good food and you're like, yeah, okay. That's me too. And when I was 4 years old, I think I've always liked good food because when I was 4 years old, it was winter in Wisconsin. I was at my mother's home and her husband had come in and he was gonna cook. And I was excited because I could smell the spices and I was dancing because the food smelled good. And I danced a little too close to the stove, I believe, because he said, hey, stay away from the stove, go over that way. And so I did, but the next thing you knew, I was back by that stove and I was dancing. And I think it aggravated him because in turn, it aggravated my mother because the next thing I knew, there was a belt buckle being whacked across my back. And it happened again and again and again until I ended up in Children's Hospital for 2 weeks. When I was 4 years old, I was removed from my mother's home and I was placed with my grandmother. I stayed with my grandmother for a little while, and living in her home has its own story, its own hurdles, its own tackles, its own traumas. So I didn't stay there for long, and I eventually went back to my mother's home. You don't have to worry, next time I went to my mother's home, I didn't get another whipping to the backside. because they had sort of decided to stop feeding us. My mother and her husband had this little blue car that was sitting in the parking spot, and it was broken down. And they would lock all the good food and snacks in the trunk of that car. And we would be waiting for it, hungry. These are my hurdles. I was a kid waiting to eat and angry about it. If you're wondering where my father was during that time, well, that's another one of my big hurdles in life, is being a fatherless child. I think the best way I can describe my dad is to say that when I was 10, my great-grandparents wanted to take me to Disney World to their family reunion. And I was excited about that because every kid wants to go to Disney World. And they talked to my aunt, who helped take care of me as well, and they said, we got her a plane ticket, and so we're just gonna have her dad pick her up to drop her off at the airport with us. And my aunt said, great. And my aunt took me shopping, and she did my hair, and we got ready, and I was counting down those days. And then the day came, and I woke up really early in the morning, and I went on the porch, and it was 6 a.m., and I was waiting because I was like, my father's gonna pick me up, and I'm gonna go to Disney World. And I waited on that porch all day because he never showed up. So you see, when I was 12, the field that was my life had been through a lot so far. But I survived it all. And I made the first big leap when I was 12 because I left my mother's home, and in turn, leaving a lot of things that had left me also tackled, beaten down a little bit, bruised. But I took a leap anyway, and I left my mother's home because a social worker, she said to me I could avoid going to foster care if I went to go stay with another family member. And I was like, that might be good. I don't need to be with my family. I don't need to be in the foster group. I don't want to do that. So I went to go stay with another family member. But it took 4.5 years before I feel like I sort of took a true leap and got over that wall. In those 4.5 years, I spent some time house hopping. Do you know what that is? You stay with one person and another person and another person until I ended up at Walker's Point Group Home on the south side of Milwaukee. And here's the thing. I could have stayed at Walker's Point. Walker's Point was good. They did the things that, everybody should probably have when you've lived my life, and they wanted you to do group counseling, and they wanted you to participate in one-on-one sessions to deal with things. But I really wanted to play tennis, and I wanted to do theater after school, and I couldn't do those things staying at Walker Point because it wasn't the priority at the time. So I left Walker Point's group home, and I bus hopped for 3 nights. Do you know what it means to bus hop? I lived in Milwaukee. I grew up in Milwaukee. The bus hop means to go from one bus to another bus all night long until the buses stop running for about 2 hours, and then you get the next bus when it starts again. I did that for 3 nights until I had the courage to call a woman named Desiree for help. And I think that was probably one of my great leaps in trusting myself and having the courage to call this lady who had been my dance instructor. And she took me into her home at the age of 17 without question, and she has nurtured me since. See, these stories are just small pieces and glimpses into the greater life story of mine. There was quite a bit that I had to survive. And if I wanted to do more than survive, then I had to make some bold choices and leaps. I'm sure after all of that, you all are probably wondering to yourselves, how did this girl arrive here? Because statistically, I shouldn't be here right now. Not in this room giving a keynote. No, statistically, I should have probably ended up homeless, a high school dropout, a teen mom, in and out of jail, who knows? In between all of the life happening to me and around me, how did I arrive here? Here, be in my position of leadership as a multifaceted artist who is emotionally intelligent, who's mentally aware and self-aware, who is financially responsible, confident, at peace. I'm joyful, educated, purposeful. I'm the voice of a generation, a truth teller and seeker. I am healed, whole, optimistic, abundant, and constantly in a state of gratitude. I am somebody worth Googling. Ain't that something? Almost sound like I'm bragging. But who is that young girl who was abandoned and silenced and starved and beaten and misplaced, who lacked belonging and parental guidance to speak of herself in such a way And how did she arrive here? I hear from people all the time that I carry this light and this energy, but if we calculated my life back from when I was 4 to the point I am right now, you too would understand how the math does not add up, because there's no way that the life I now know would equate the life I knew would equate to the person I am today. It took a lot of leaps to arrive to this version of myself in front of you, but it also took some really great leaders to shape and mold me into the leader that I am. The leaps came because I had no other choice but to make a choice and hope that it was the right one and that I would gain forward momentum no matter what. But arriving into my position of leadership was not by chance. It was because I had great leaders around me. I broke the equation somehow, and the how belongs to those leaders. You know, whenever one of those players actually make it over the wall, because we've seen a few times where they hit it, but whenever one of those players take that leap and make it over that wall, there's a crowd of folks ready to catch them and cheer them on. And boy, do I have a crowd. When I think of the leaders in my life, the first people I think of are my middle school teachers. I went to John Muir Middle School in Milwaukee, and I had some really great middle school teachers. And I can't just name one of them because they all did so much. But my teachers in middle school were the first people to meet me where I was and teach me ownership. I mean, I wasn't a bad kid, but you know, we all get into our fair share of trouble and disrespect sometimes. But they didn't allow me to make excuses for myself or my situation. When I was in the 6th grade, I learned the saying, excuses are the tools of the incompetent, which are used to build bridges to nowhere and monuments of nothingness, and those who use them seldom amount to anything. I have held on to that since the 6th grade. And every time I think about it, I be like, excuses are the tools of the incompetent. It's how I live my life, because they did that for me. When I was in high school, I had a job at the library my junior and senior year. And I thought this was gonna be easy, right? I just gotta dust off a couple books, stamp a return date, keep it moving. And my librarian said, no. This isn't about shelving books and stamping return dates and doing paperwork. But she taught me how to love stories. She taught me the importance of critical thinking and asking the right questions. When I was 12, I had the chance to be a part of a summer program with Signature Dance Company. And the founders of that company, they were my dance instructors, they were my mentors, and eventually my bosses. And they challenged every part of my being. They forced me to look at myself and choose greater all the time. They were aggressive in their approach to help me unlearn. And let's be clear, this is a dance company, and I know I'm an artist, and I do musicals for the most part, and I can, do a little releve, plie, attitude, bop my, I can do all that, but I am not a dancer, okay? Do some stuff, but I'm not a dancer. But they were invested in Lachrissa, the person, not the dancer. And that woman I called at the age of 17 was one of the founders of that company who took me into her home, and I grew up in that company. I was a young girl who did a summer camp one year, and then when I was 17, I worked sort of just as an assistant at the camp, and eventually I became the theater teacher for the camp, and then I became the camp manager, and now I'm the director of the camp. Grew up in that company, still work for them. Now I run the camp program. They saw so much more in me. When I was in college, I really wanted to be an RA. You know what an RA is? Resident assistant. Now, I like people. I like talking to people. I like getting to know people. In my freshman year, I applied to be an RA because I was like, oh, I'm good at this. I can do this really well. I didn't get the job. Can you believe that? They didn't hire me as an RA. I said, it's okay. They probably just need to get to know me. They don't know me yet. I'm new here. I'll get it next year. So I applied my sophomore year. And at that point, I was like, they know me now. Also, I was like one of 7 black kids on campus. They know me. I'm around. Everybody know who Lachrissa is. I didn't get the job again my sophomore year, and I was so salty about it. Oh, I was so salty. And my RC at the time, my resident counselor, she saw me, and she didn't let me sulk. And she said, hey, Lachrissa, I know you really wanted to be an RA, but I think you should consider something else. I said, what? And I was salty because I like people, but also I like free room and board. I said, what is it, Barb? And she said, I think you should consider the Warrior Events Board. And it was the committee of students that ran our campus events for the most part. And I said, sure. So I got engaged with the Warrior Events Board my sophomore year. And then she nudged me to run for an office, and then I became the off-campus weekend events coordinator. So for 3 years, they gave me a budget of $37,000 and said, here, we think you can impact the entire student body instead of just this one hallway that you were focused on. So we're gonna give you this budget, and it's your responsibility to ensure everybody has a great campus experience. Blew my mind. Blew my mind because she saw something greater in me, and I didn't see that. In 2018, Northern Sky Theater hired me. Northern Sky Theater is in Door County. And you know, I hear a lot of people have mentioned Door County. If you're there, come see me this summer. I'll be in a show that I wrote. Yeah. But Northern Sky Theater hired me in 2018 as an actress to perform in a show. And I came up, and the first thing they asked was, do you play any instruments? And I said, no. And not since high school, at least. And they said, are you willing to learn? I said, sure. What do you have in mind? And they taught me to play the upright bass. Do you know what an upright bass is? An instrument, okay? I learned to play the upright bass for an entire show, and I learned to do some percussion as well. A year later, I was back at Northern Sky, and I was sitting on my artistic director's porch, and I was writing a poem, and she read this poem, and she said, you should write a musical for us. And I said, I think I said no at first, but then eventually I did, clearly, because I wrote a musical called Sunflower that they produced in 2022. And then in 2020, they sent myself and a bunch of my peers and coworkers for an 8-week writing session to work with the History Theater. The History Theater is in Minnesota, but we did this virtually. And when we got done, we were like, we want to keep going. There was something more. We felt like all the writers in this group still had more to give. And I went to my artistic directors at the time and I said, hey, thanks for sending us. This group was really great and we want more of it. And then I said, also, you know, this is a company that only produces new works. And so I think you all should have something like this, a program that nurtures new voices. And my artistic director looked at me and said, that's a great idea, Lachrissa. You want to take it on? And they created a position for me as NOVA program director. NOVA stands for Nurturing Original Voices and Artists. You know, when I started working at Northern Sky in 2018 as an actor, I thought it was just another gig. I was just going to go perform in another show. I did not expect the way that they would elevate me. You want to know what all those great leaders have in common? I'm sure you're wondering. All these stories, that's great, Lachrissa, all those people. They all saw me. They taught me, they loved me, they corrected me, they celebrated me, they challenged me, they pushed me, inspired me, they listened to me, they supported me, they trusted me, they collaborated with me, respected me, they fostered my independence, built my confidence, empowered my voice, invested in me, and they nurtured me. Great leaders aren't great leaders because they demand so well. Great leaders are great leaders because they nurture people. They nurture the people they're leading, and I, in turn, nurturer of people. Right when I graduated college, I was offered a job as a performing arts teacher for K-3 through 8th grade students, and I had been working at this school part-time for a few years, so it was an easy yes. I love the arts, and I love kids. And so I was like, I can do that. And a few years after working there, I went to another school to be a 5th grade homeroom teacher. And one morning, one of my 5th grade students, his name was Daniel, he did not want to do his writing entry for that morning, his journal entry, which was to write a letter to his future self. So write a letter to your future self, encourage your future self, ask them the questions and tell them what you think. And instead, he looked at me and he said, Ms. Grandberry, why are you making us do this? It's not like you went out to chase your dreams. Yeah, I know, I see your face, because that's how I felt too. You want somebody to be honest with you? Teach 5th grade. I said, wow, okay. That day I made a deal with him. I said, Daniel, listen up. You do this writing entry, I will go on the computer right now and I will find an audition and I will go audition. Deal? He said, sure. Here I am now, a full-time freelance artist. He was not so happy about that part when I left the classroom. But I wasn't the kind of teacher where I was always right. And this is one of the many cases where my students certainly knew better than me. Why am I telling you this? Because how do you go from leading to legacy? How do you go from arriving to thriving? You get there through a growth mindset, not by being caught in a place where you believe that there is nothing left for you to learn, but you get there by knowing that there is always room for you to grow. If you think you've arrived and you don't need anything more, then you'll never create a legacy. But when you believe that what you have, and when you believe that what you've done is pinnacle, you stifle the growth and innovation of everybody around you. Legacy is about what happens next. What those who come after you do with what you gave them. And the next generation has to be equipped not only with the knowledge of your achievements, but also the curiosity to ask new questions. If I hadn't given my 5th grade student Daniel the option to push me as well, I would not be where I am. This legacy thing is so much bigger than me. It's bigger than you, it's bigger than all of us. Because it's not just about preserving what we've done, but it's about inspiring those who come after you to explore what you didn't explore, to ask the questions you didn't think to ask, to consider the perspectives that we didn't take into account, to consider the missed opportunities, to think about what did we overlook and what is crucial for them to now consider. And I believe that if you want to thrive, you have to trust the next generation. You have to trust that they will be smarter in ways that you can't even imagine, and trust that their knowledge and wisdom doesn't diminish your own accomplishment, but it amplifies them. I mean, my 5th grade student can now say that my teacher is an actress, a writer, a keynote speaker, somebody worth Googling because I dared her. I hope that as you take this journey, you'll build a legacy that cultivates a culture where wisdom flows both ways, where experience meets innovation, and where every generation can build on the foundations laid by the last. I survived a lot. I've taken some bold leaps and that have allowed me to arrive in my position of leadership, and I am thriving because I am anxious to keep learning from everybody around me. So take the leaps when necessary. Lead the people with a nurturing heart, and lead a legacy that is colored in a growth mindset. Thank you all.
Lachrissa, from all of us here, I think that speaks volumes. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us. The leaps that you've taken have been amazing. Your perseverance, your growth mindset, and being present in your journey. Congratulations on where you're at, and it's going to be exciting to see where you go. Now it's time for our first networking break of the summit, sponsored by Nicolay National Bank. We're going to start this break and give you guys 10 minutes, and then if you can all come back to your seats to join us for the rest of the program, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.